I never thought I'd be the type of person to share something like this online, but I can't stop thinking about what happened to us. Back in 2019, my wife and I bought a house just outside the city. It wasn't perfect, but the price was way lower than anything else we had seen in the area. 3 bedrooms, a backyard for our kids, and just enough space to finally feel like we had our own place. The realtor told us it had been sitting on the market for a while because it needed some work. We brushed it off, thinking it was just the peeling paint and the creaky floorboards. The first few months were normal. We fixed up the kids' rooms, painted the walls, and even had a few family barbecues in the backyard. Life was good. But the house, it always had this odd silence to it, even with the kids running around. At night, when everything was quiet, the place felt heavier, like the air was thick. One night, while I was helping my wife move some old boxes from the garage to the hallway closet, I noticed something strange. The closet floor didn't sit right with the rest of the wood. It looked newer, like it had been replaced recently. The boards had a different shade compared to the rest of the flooring. At first, I thought maybe it was just water damage or a bad repair job, but when I pressed my foot on it, it felt hollow. I didn't tell my wife right away because I didn't want to freak her out. Instead, a couple of days later, when I was home alone, I grabbed a screwdriver and pried up one of the boards. Underneath was a dark square opening, an entrance I didn't even know existed. It wasn't just a crawl space. It was a stairway leading down. I froze. Something about the way the air rushed up from below made me feel sick. It was damp and smelled like rust, or maybe something worse. I didn't go down that day. I just put the board back in place and acted like nothing happened. A week went by before I worked up the courage to check that hidden stairwell again. Every night, I lay in bed thinking about it, imagining what could be down there. Part of me hoped it was just some old root cellar, maybe even forgotten storage we could use. But another part of me, the bigger part, kept asking why anyone would cover it up. It was on a Saturday when my curiosity got the best of me. My wife had taken the kids to her sister's place, so I was alone. I pried the boards open again, grabbed a flashlight, and forced myself to step down into the darkness. The stairs creaked under my weight. They weren't made of the same wood as the rest of the house. They looked older, rough, unfinished. As I went deeper, the smell hit me stronger. It wasn't just dampness. It smelled metallic, like rust, mixed with something sour. At the bottom, I expected to find a small basement or storage room. Instead, the space was bigger than I thought, stretching further than the house's footprint above. The walls weren't finished, just concrete and dirt, with strange markings scratched into them. Not graffiti, not paint, more like someone had carved symbols with something sharp. Then I noticed the shelves, wooden planks lined against the far wall, and on them jars, dozens of them, each filled with something dark floating inside. Some looked like bones, others like preserved animal parts, though I couldn't be sure. My stomach churned and I felt my legs wanting to run back upstairs. But what made me freeze was the chair in the corner. A single wooden chair facing the shelves, like someone had been sitting there, watching whatever was in those jars. Next to it, a rusty metal bucket. The air down there was so heavy, and my flashlight flickered like the batteries were dying. I remember whispering, almost without thinking, "What the hell is this place?" And then I heard it. From deeper in the darkness, past where my light could reach, there was a sound. Slow, deliberate, like footsteps shifting on the dirt floor. I didn't wait. I bolted up the stairs, slammed the board shut, and dragged a heavy box over it. My chest was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. That night, I told my wife everything. She laughed at first, thought I was joking, but when she saw my face, she went pale. She begged me not to go down there again.
But we both knew the truth now. There was something hidden under our house, and someone had gone to great lengths to keep it buried.
After that night, I tried to pretend nothing happened. I told myself maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe the smell in the jars got to me and I panicked. But deep down, I knew what I heard. The problem was, things didn't stay quiet. A few nights later, my wife woke me up around 2 a.m. She said she heard something moving under the floor. I brushed it off at first, saying it was probably the pipes or maybe rats. But then I heard it too, slow dragging sounds like someone pulling their feet across dirt. Over the next few weeks, the house changed. The air in the living room always smelled faintly like that basement, no matter how much we cleaned. The kids started complaining about bad dreams, dreams of a man sitting in a chair, watching them from the corner of their rooms. One night, my daughter screamed so loud we thought she was hurt. When we rushed in, she said she saw a shadow crawling out of the wall near her bed. I checked everywhere, but of course there was nothing. Still, her window was wide open, and she swore she hadn't touched it. Finally, I decided to call the previous owner. He was an older guy who had moved out of state, and when I reached him, his voice went tense the moment I mentioned the basement. He said, "You weren't supposed to find that. I told them to seal it. I thought it was gone for good." I asked him what he meant, but he hung up on me. I tried calling back, but he never answered again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, staring at the floor where the hidden door lay beneath the carpet. Around 3 a.m., the smell grew so strong I gagged. And then I heard it again, the slow steps right below me. The boards under my chair creaked like something was pressing up from underneath. I don't remember much after that, except grabbing my kids, rushing them into the car, and driving to my in-laws. We left everything behind. Clothes, furniture, even my tools. I didn't care. A few days later, I got a call from a friend who drove past our old house. He said the windows were all blacked out, like something heavy was leaning against them from the inside. He swore he saw someone standing in the upstairs window. But the thing is, no one lives there anymore. We never went back. I still remember how happy my wife was the day we signed the papers. After years of renting tiny apartments, we finally had a place to call our own. A 2-story house on the edge of town, surrounded by trees and quiet neighbors. It wasn't perfect. The paint was chipped, the stairs creaked, and the place had a faint, musty smell. But it was ours. The realtor mentioned the house had been vacant for a while, though she didn't say how long. She just smiled too much when I asked about the previous owner. I should have known something was off then. The first few weeks went smoothly. We unpacked, cleaned, painted, and settled in. My wife, Claire, loved the big kitchen, and I finally had a garage to work on my old car. The only thing that bothered me was the basement door, an old, thick wooden door with a metal latch that didn't quite fit right. It was padlocked when we moved in, but I assumed it was just for safety. About 2 months later, I decided to break the lock and check it out. I wanted to use it as a storage space for tools. When I pried the door open, a wave of cold, damp air hit me, the kind that smells like mold and rust. The single light bulb down there didn't work, so I grabbed my flashlight and started down the stairs. At first it was just clutter, boxes, old furniture, broken lamps. But the deeper I went, the stranger it got. The walls weren't made of brick like most basements. They were covered in soundproof padding, like you'd find in a recording studio. The floor was concrete, but near the back wall, there were stains, dark, uneven patches that looked almost black.
In the corner, I found a metal chain bolted into the floor, still attached to a broken leather strap. I froze. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe the previous owner had a dog? But then, I noticed a camera mount fixed to the ceiling. No camera, just the metal arm, pointed directly at the chained spot. That's when I decided to stop exploring. I turned around and went back upstairs, pretending I hadn't seen any of it. That night, I couldn't eat. Claire noticed. When I told her about the chain, she laughed nervously at first, then said maybe we should call the realtor and ask about it. But deep down, I already knew. Something bad had happened down there. Something no one had ever told us about. And as I lay awake that night, I could have sworn I heard something metallic clink from under the floor. Just once.
I didn't go back down to the basement for almost 2 weeks after finding the chain. Every time I walked past that door, I could feel something heavy behind it, like the air itself pressed against me. I even nailed the latch shut. But things didn't stay quiet. It started with Claire. She told me she kept hearing a faint tapping sound late at night, like metal hitting concrete. I checked the pipes, the vents, even the crawl space. Nothing. The sound always came from the basement. Then one afternoon, while cleaning the garage, Claire found a small box wedged behind a stack of paint cans. It was old, the wood warped, the hinges nearly rusted shut. Inside were several cassette tapes, unlabeled, just numbered 1 through 6 in black marker. I didn't have a cassette player, so I borrowed one from a neighbor the next day. I remember sitting in the living room, Claire beside me, as I pressed play on the first tape. The audio was grainy at first, white noise, a hum of static, and then faint breathing. After a few seconds, a woman's voice whispered something. I couldn't make out the words at first, but when I turned up the volume, she said it again, clearer this time. "Please, I'll be good. Don't—" I stopped the tape immediately. We sat in silence for a long time, neither of us knowing what to say. Claire started crying quietly, and I just stared at the player, my hands shaking. I went to the police that night. They didn't seem surprised when I told them the address. The officer exchanged a quick look with his partner before saying, "We'll send someone to check." When they came the next morning, they didn't let us near the house. For hours, we watched from outside as more officers arrived, then a coroner's van. Finally, a detective approached us. He asked if we had gone deeper into the basement. I told him no. He nodded slowly, almost like he expected that answer. Then he said, "You did the right thing calling us. The man who used to live here, he was being investigated before he disappeared. We never found enough evidence to tie him to the missing women in the area." Claire went pale. The detective paused for a long moment, then added, "Until now." He didn't tell us everything, but we overheard one of the officers on the radio mention they found multiple bodies buried behind the padded wall. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the chain and that camera mount pointing directly at it. The police kept our house sealed for nearly 2 weeks. They wouldn't tell us much, just that it was part of an ongoing investigation. Claire and I stayed with her sister in the meantime, but neither of us slept. Every night I could still hear that voice from the tape whispering in my head, "Please, I'll be good." When the detective finally called, he asked us to come by the station. I thought maybe they needed another statement, but what he showed us that day still makes my stomach turn. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos from the basement. Behind the padded wall, they found a hidden room, smaller, made of cement and sealed with a false panel. Inside were 5 bodies, all women. Each was restrained in the same way,
a leather strap on the floor, a single chain bolted to the wall. The detective said the killer had been living there for nearly a decade before disappearing. They never found him. But in that room, they discovered something else. A journal. The entries were disturbing. Meticulous logs of sessions, dates and names that matched missing person cases spanning 5 years. And at the end, the last entry was dated 3 days before we moved in. The new owners come tomorrow. They won't find it. They never do. I don't remember much after reading that. I just sat there, numb, while the detective explained that they had enough DNA to reopen several cold cases. He thanked us for calling when we did, said we probably helped bring closure to a lot of families. But it didn't feel like closure. The next week, we returned to the house to collect our things. It didn't even feel like the same place anymore. The air was heavy with the smell of bleach, and parts of the basement had been dug up completely. Before we left, I went down there one last time. The light flickered, and for a second, I thought I heard that faint metallic sound again, the chain clinking softly like someone moving just out of sight. But what froze me was the far corner. The police had cleared everything out, but there, drawn faintly into the concrete with what looked like rust, were 2 words. Thank you. I didn't tell Claire. We packed our things, signed the release papers, and left for good. The house was demolished a month later. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I still wonder if you really left.